I used to think loyalty was something you earned by giving everything you had. I believed that if you worked hard enough, loved deep enough, and sacrificed without complaint, the people closest to you would never turn their backs on you. I was a fool. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm 41 years old, and 6 months ago I discovered that every person I trusted most in this world had been lying to my face for years. This is the story of how I burned their world to the ground and built something better from the ashes. It started on a Tuesday evening in late September. I'd come home early from my shift at the engineering firm where I'd worked for 14 years. My daughter Lily had left her tablet on the kitchen island, screen still glowing. She was 6 years old and obsessed with drawing apps, so I picked it up intending to plug it in before the battery died. That's when I saw the notification banner across the top. It was from a messaging app I didn't recognize, and the preview showed my wife Serena's name in a group conversation titled The Inner Circle. The message read, "Marcus is working overtime again tonight. Perfect timing. I should have put the tablet down. I should have asked Serena about it later over dinner like a rational adult." But something cold slithered through my chest, and my thumb was already tapping the screen before my brain could stop it. The conversation stretched back over 3 years. 3 years of messages between my wife Serena, my older brother Victor, Victor's wife Danielle, and my own mother Ruth. They had created this group specifically to coordinate around me, to manage me, to use me. The messages started casually enough with complaints about my long hours and jokes about how predictable I was. But they escalated quickly into something far darker. Victor wrote things like, "He'll sign whatever you put in front of him. He's always been the obedient one in the family." My mother, the woman who raised me, responded, "Just make sure the account transfers look like joint expenses. He never checks the statements." I scrolled further, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the tablet. Serena had been siphoning money from our joint savings for years, funneling it into an account controlled by my mother under the guise of a family trust fund for Lily, except the money wasn't going into any trust. It was financing Victor's failing restaurant, paying off Danielle's credit card debt, and funding my mother's lavish trips to Europe with her church group. They'd taken over $170,000. But the money wasn't even the worst part. About 18 months into the conversation, the tone shifted. Serena started mentioning someone named Drew. At first, it was subtle. Drew says the paperwork should be ready by March. Drew thinks we should wait until after Marcus gets his annual bonus. Then it became less subtle. Drew came by again today, told him he needs to park around the block. Lily almost saw his car last time. My stomach turned to concrete. I knew exactly who Drew was. Andrew Callahan, my best friend since college. The man who'd stood beside me at my wedding. The man who came to our 4th of July barbecues every year, who taught Lily how to ride a bicycle, who called me brother and looked me in the eye while apparently sleeping with my wife in the bed I paid for. I set the tablet down and walked to the bathroom. I gripped the edges of the sink and stared at my reflection. The face looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. Not angry yet, not sad, just hollow, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me human. I stood there for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall, counting each second, feeling the numbness slowly crystallize into something harder, something colder, something with edges. By the time I walked out of that bathroom, the man who trusted blindly, who never questioned, who always assumed the best in people, that man was dead. What replaced him was patient, methodical, and absolutely merciless. I didn't confront anyone. Not that night, not the next day, not the next week. I smiled at Serena over breakfast. I called my mother on Sunday like I always did. I shook Drew's hand at poker night and laughed at his jokes. But behind that mask, I was building a case that would level all of them. I hired a private attorney named Catherine Mercer, a woman with a reputation for being surgically precise in divorce proceedings. I showed her the screenshots I'd taken of the group chat and watched her expression shift from professional composure to barely concealed shock. "This is systematic financial fraud," she said, flipping through the pages I'd printed. "Your mother orchestrated this?" I nodded. She leaned back in her chair. "Marcus, this isn't just grounds for divorce. Some of this is criminal." "I know," I said, "and I want every option on the table." 3 days later, Lily came home from school with a drawing she'd made in art class. It showed our house with stick figures standing outside. There was me, tall with brown hair. There was Serena, with her yellow curls. There was Lily herself, tiny, with a big smile. And there was a fourth figure, taller than me, standing very close to Serena, holding her hand. I knelt down beside my daughter. "Who's this, sweetheart?" I asked, pointing at the figure. "That's Uncle Drew," she said brightly. "He comes over when you're at work, Daddy. He and Mommy watch movies in your room. Sometimes he brings me ice cream, but Mommy says I shouldn't tell you because it's a surprise." She beamed up at me, completely innocent, and I felt something crack behind my ribs. Not because of the confirmation I already knew, but because they had dragged my 6-year-old daughter into their web of lies. They had taught her to keep secrets from her own father. That night, after Lily was asleep, I installed 2 small motion-activated cameras, one in the living room, hidden inside a bookshelf speaker that hadn't worked in years, one in the hallway outside our bedroom. I didn't put one in the bedroom itself. I didn't need to see that. I just needed timestamps, faces, and frequency. The very next day, at 12:47 in the afternoon, Drew's black SUV pulled into our driveway. He didn't even bother parking around the block anymore. The camera captured everything, him letting himself in with a key I never gave him, Serena greeting him at the door, in a way that left zero room for interpretation, him leaving 2 hours and 15 minutes later, adjusting his collar, checking his phone, driving away like it was just another Tuesday. I watched the footage in my car during my lunch break, parked behind a gas station. I didn't cry. I didn't punch the steering wheel. I simply saved the file, emailed it to Catherine, and went back to work. Over the following 2 weeks, I gathered everything. Bank statements showing the transfers to my mother's account. Property records showing Victor had used some of the money as a down payment on his restaurant. Text messages between Serena and Drew going back almost 2 years, many of them explicit enough to make a divorce judge's eyebrows hit the ceiling. I even found emails between my mother and Serena discussing how to handle things once they served me with divorce papers. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. They were going to wait until I received my year-end bonus in December, approximately $35,000, transfer it out within 48 hours, then Serena would file for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences. My mother would testify that I was emotionally absent and potentially unstable. Victor would back her up. Drew would conveniently vanish from the picture, and Serena would get the house, primary custody of Lily, and generous alimony. I was supposed to end up confused, broke, and too beaten down to fight back. They had been grooming me for this for years. Every time I questioned a bank charge, Serena would kiss my forehead and say it was for Lily's activities. Every time I mentioned feeling tired or disconnected, my mother would tell me I was working too hard and suggest I let Serena handle the finances. They'd built a cage around me so slowly I never felt the bars closing in. But now I could see every bar, and I had the key. My mother's 70th birthday party was scheduled for the last Saturday in October. She'd rented the back room at an upscale restaurant in Midtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a wine list thicker than a phone book. The entire family would be there. Victor and Danielle, Serena and me, my aunt and uncle from Pittsburgh, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Even Drew had been invited because he was practically family, as my mother liked to say. The irony almost made me laugh. I RSVP'd enthusiastically. I bought my mother an expensive perfume set and wrapped it beautifully. I told Serena I was looking forward to it, that it would be nice for the whole family to be together. She smiled at me the way she always did, warm on the surface, calculating underneath, and said she was glad I was in such good spirits. I arranged for Lily to spend the night at her best friend's house. I told Serena it was because the party would run late and Lily needed her sleep for a school project the next day. In truth, I wanted my daughter nowhere near what was about to happen. Saturday arrived. I put on my best suit, the navy one Serena had picked out for me 2 Christmases ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and adjusted my tie. Serena appeared behind me, stunning in a dark green dress, and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You look handsome," she murmured. I looked at her reflection. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. And for 3 years, she'd used that beauty as camouflage while she and my family picked me apart like vultures on a carcass. "You look wonderful too," I said, and I meant it the way a soldier might compliment the craftsmanship of the weapon pointed at him. The restaurant was warm and golden, filled with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. My mother sat at the head of a long rectangular table, regal in a cream-colored blouse, accepting kisses on both cheeks from everyone who approached. She caught my eye and smiled. "Marcus, darling, come sit by me." I hugged her, smelling her familiar perfume, and felt nothing. Victor was across the table with Danielle, already on his second glass of wine, talking loudly about the restaurant business as if he hadn't funded it with stolen money. Drew sat near the end of the table, looking relaxed, laughing with my cousin about something. When he saw me, he raised his glass. "Marcus, my man, Good to see you, brother. I raised mine back. Wouldn't miss it, I said. We ate. We drank. My mother gave a speech about family and loyalty and how blessed she was to have children who would do anything for her. I watched Serena nod along, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Victor toasted to family bonds. Danielle squeezed his arm adoringly. It was a magnificent performance, all of them Oscar-worthy. And I clapped along with everyone else, waiting for my moment. It came just after dessert. The waiters had cleared the plates, and someone was calling for another round of champagne. I stood up, tapping my glass with a fork. The table quieted. 50-odd faces turned toward me. I'd like to say something, I began, keeping my voice steady, warm even. Mom, this is your 70th birthday. 70 years of being the cornerstone of this family. I think that deserves something special, my mother beamed. Serena reached over and squeezed my hand. I let her. So, I've put together a little presentation, I continued. A gift, if you will. Something that shows just how much this family means to me and how much I've learned about the people closest to me this year. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the restaurant's projection screen, the one they used for corporate events. I'd called ahead and arranged it with the manager, telling him I was putting together a birthday slideshow. The first image that appeared was a screenshot of the group chat titled The Inner Circle. The room went silent. Not gradually, not politely, but instantly, like someone had sucked all the oxygen out. My mother's face drained of color. Serena's hand jerked away from mine, as if she'd touched a hot stove. Victor froze with his champagne glass halfway to his lips. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements, transfer records. $173,000 to be exact, moved from our joint account into an account registered under Ruth Reed, with authorized users Serena Reed and Victor Reed. I clicked again. Emails from my mother to Serena detailing the timeline for the divorce, how to maximize the financial extraction, when to file, how to frame the custody argument. Another click. Camera footage stills of Drew entering my house. Time-stamped. 12 separate occasions over 2 months. Drew's face went white. He looked at Serena. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the screen with her mouth open, both hands flat on the table as if the room were spinning. What the hell is this? Victor finally managed, his voice cracking. This, I said calmly, is what happens when the obedient one in the family finally checks the statements. My mother gripped the edge of the table. Marcus, she whispered, her composure crumbling for the first time in my entire life. You don't understand. We were trying to protect you. Protect me, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. You stole $170,000 from me. You helped my wife plan a divorce designed to leave me with nothing. You taught my 6-year-old daughter to lie to my face. That's your definition of protection? The room erupted. My aunt from Pittsburgh started shouting at Victor. Cousins were whispering frantically. Danielle was furiously scrolling through her own phone, probably checking bank accounts she'd never thought to question. Victor stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. You had no right, he snarled, pointing at me. That money was an investment. In what? I shot back. Your failing restaurant that hasn't turned a profit in 3 years? You invested my money, Victor. Mine. Without my knowledge or consent. That's not an investment. That's theft. He lunged toward me across the table, knocking over glasses and sending silverware clattering to the floor. My uncle grabbed him and held him back. 2 cousins helped. Victor's face was purple with rage, but underneath the anger I could see it. Fear. The animal recognition of a man who knows the walls are closing in. Then Drew stood up. He held both hands out like a man trying to calm a dog. Marcus, look. I know how this seems, but Serena and we didn't plan for it to happen. I took 3 steps toward him. The room fell silent again. Drew was taller than me by 2 inches, broader by 20 pounds. He'd played linebacker in college, but right now he looked small, shrunken. Because the thing about guilt is that it eats your strength from the inside. You came into my house, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You used a key my wife gave you behind my back. You played with my daughter and then you went upstairs and slept with her mother. And you did it over and over for 2 years while shaking my hand and calling me brother. He swallowed. I didn't throw the first punch. He did, technically. He reached for my shoulder, maybe to push me away, maybe to plead. I'll never know. And something inside me detonated. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it sideways, and drove my fist into the center of his face. I felt cartilage shift under my knuckles. Blood sprayed across the white tablecloth. He staggered back into the dessert cart, sending plates of tiramisu crashing to the floor. I followed him, grabbed him by the collar of his expensive shirt, and hit him again and again. Each impact carried the weight of every lie, every handshake, every time he'd looked at me, with that easy grin while hiding the worst betrayal a man can commit. Someone was screaming. Several someones. Chairs were scraping back. Serena was shrieking my name. But all I could hear was the roaring in my ears, and all I could see was his face. My uncle and two of my cousins finally pulled me off. Drew collapsed against the wall, hand cupped over his nose, blood streaming through his fingers. His eyes were wide with shock, and something else. Recognition. He was seeing me for the first time. The real me. Not the pushover. Not the nice guy. Not the dependable Marcus, who never made waves. He was seeing the man his betrayal had created. I shrugged off the hands holding me and straightened my jacket. My knuckles throbbed, my chest heaved, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "Go ahead and call the police," I said, looking directly at my mother. "I welcome it. Because when they arrive, I'll hand them a flash drive containing 3 years of documented financial fraud, forged signatures on loan applications, and evidence of a coordinated conspiracy to defraud me. I'll take an assault charge happily, Mom. I'll be out in hours. Can you say the same?" The room was deathly still. My mother's phone sat in her hand, half raised. She lowered it slowly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was the first time in 70 years Ruth Reed had nothing to say. I turned to Serena. She was crying, mascara running in dark rivers down her cheeks, her green dress suddenly looking too bright, too costume-like, in the harsh overhead light. "Marcus, please," she gasped. "I made a mistake. We can work through this. I love you." I stared at her for a long time. Then I reached into my breast pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I held it up so everyone could see it. "This is a DNA paternity test," I said. The room somehow got even quieter. Serena's sobbing stopped mid-breath, cut off like someone had pressed pause. I had it done 3 weeks ago using Lily's hairbrush and a home testing kit, then confirmed at a certified lab. I unfolded the paper. "The probability of paternity," I read, "is 99.97%. Lily is my daughter." Serena's face crumpled with what looked like relief, but I wasn't finished. "She's mine," I continued, "and you will never use her as a bargaining chip. My attorney has already filed for divorce. I'm requesting sole custody based on documented evidence of your infidelity, financial fraud, and willingness to involve a minor child in deception. If you fight me on this, every piece of evidence on that screen goes to the family court judge. All of it." Victor tried one last time. "Marcus, we're family. We can settle this without." I cut him off. "You lost the right to call us family when you stole from me and helped plan my destruction. My attorney is also filing civil suits against you and Mom for recovery of all misappropriated funds. If the restaurant has to close, that's the cost of what you did. Don't look at me like I'm the villain, Victor. I didn't betray anyone in this room. Every single one of you betrayed me." Danielle, who had been silent this entire time, suddenly spoke up. She was staring at Victor with an expression I recognized because I'd worn it myself not long ago. The look of someone whose entire reality has just shifted beneath their feet. "How much of our money went into this, Victor?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. She asked again, louder. "How much?" He mumbled something about it being complicated. She picked up her purse, stood, and walked out of the restaurant without another word. I later learned she filed for divorce the following week. Drew was still slumped against the wall, pressing a cloth napkin to his face. He hadn't said a word since I'd hit him. I walked over and stood above him. He flinched, raising one hand defensively. "Don't worry," I said. "I'm done hitting you, but you should know that your wife is going to receive a detailed package on Monday morning. Everything. Photos, timestamps, messages, all of it." The color that had started returning to his face vanished again. "Marcus, please. She doesn't deserve." "She doesn't deserve what?" I interrupted. "The truth? She deserves it more than anyone. She's been living the same lie I was. The only difference is, I'm giving her the chance to see it clearly." He closed his eyes, and tears leaked down his swollen cheeks, mixing with blood. For a moment, just a moment, I remembered the Drew from college. The guy who helped me move into my first apartment, who drove 4 hours to be at my dad's funeral, who was the first person I called when Lily was born. That man was gone now. Maybe he'd never really existed. Maybe he'd always been capable of this, and I just never wanted to see it. Either way, the friendship was ashes. I turned to face the table one final time. My mother sat rigid in her chair, aging 10 years in 10 minutes. Victor stood with his fists clenched and nowhere to swing. Serena had collapsed into a chair, face buried in her hands, shoulders shaking. Cousins and aunts and uncles stared at me with a mixture of horror and, in some cases, something that almost looked like respect. "Here's what happens next," I said, and I was surprised by how calm my own voice sounded. "Catherine Mercer, my attorney, is filing everything on Monday. Divorce proceedings, civil recovery suits, and depending on how cooperative you all decide to be, potentially criminal referrals for fraud and forgery. If anyone in this room tries to contact Lily without my written permission, I will pursue every legal remedy available to me. If anyone tries to spin a narrative where I'm the bad guy, remember that I have 3 years of documented evidence and I have no problem making it public. I'm done being managed. I'm done being the quiet one. And I'm done pretending this family is anything other than what it is." Nobody tried to stop me as I walked out. The weeks that followed were a controlled demolition. Catherine was surgical, just as advertised. She filed everything simultaneously: the divorce petition, the custody motion, the civil suits, creating a legal avalanche that buried Serena, Victor, and my mother under separate but interconnected proceedings. Serena tried to fight for joint custody, claiming my outburst at the restaurant proved I was violent and unstable. Catherine presented the group chat messages, showing that Serena and my mother had explicitly discussed how to provoke me into an outburst they could use against me in court. The text read, "If we push him hard enough at dinner, he might snap. Then we have our domestic violence angle." The judge read that message and looked at Serena over his glasses with an expression that could have frozen Lake Michigan. She didn't get joint custody. She got supervised visitation every other weekend and a court order to attend counseling before any modification would be considered. I was granted sole custody of Lily. My mother tried the guilt approach. She called me 17 times in one day. She showed up at my office. She sent my aunt to plead on her behalf. She even wrote me a 6-page letter, explaining how everything she'd done was motivated by love and concern for the family. Catherine's forensic accountant found an additional $42,000 in charges my mother had made using a credit card opened in my name without my knowledge. I never responded to the letter. Victor's restaurant closed within 2 months, once the civil suit froze the accounts funded by my money. Danielle's divorce proceedings revealed that Victor had been hiding debts on top of the stolen funds. He tried calling me once, drunk, at 2 in the morning. "You destroyed this family," he slurred. "No, Victor," I replied. "I just turned on the lights. You destroyed it in the dark." I hung up and blocked his number. As for Drew, I kept my promise. His wife, Angela, received the package on Monday morning, as I'd said. She called me that afternoon, voice steady but hollow in a way I recognized. "How long did you know?" she asked. "About 5 weeks before I went public," I told her. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I needed the legal framework in place first." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you for telling me at all." Apparently, Drew had been feeding her lies about working late and client dinners for 2 years. She filed for divorce and took their twin boys. She also told every mutual friend they had. Drew lost his job 3 weeks later when his firm learned about the affair through the social fallout. A partner at the firm was Angela's college roommate. Small world, big consequences. Drew tried to see me one last time. He appeared at my new apartment about 3 months after everything exploded. He was thinner, haunted-looking, wearing clothes that looked like he'd been sleeping in them. He stood on my doorstep in the December cold and said, "I just need you to know, I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything. I lost Angela, the boys, my career, everything, and I deserved all of it. But we were brothers once, Marcus. That meant something to me, even if you can't believe that now." I looked at him standing there in the cold, this man I'd known for 20 years, and I searched inside myself for anger. It wasn't there anymore. What I found instead was just an empty space where a friendship used to be. "It meant something to me too," I said. "That's why it hurt as much as it did." He nodded, eyes glistening. Then he asked if I could forgive him. "Maybe someday," I said honestly, "but not today, and probably not tomorrow either." He accepted that with a small nod, turned, and walked away down the sidewalk with his hands shoved in his pockets. I closed the door and went back to helping Lily with her homework. 6 months have passed since that night at the restaurant. The divorce is finalized. I was awarded the house, the majority of our assets, and a judgment against Serena for her portion of the financial fraud. She took a plea deal on the criminal charges, avoiding jail time but receiving 2 years of probation and mandatory restitution. My mother was charged separately. Her case is still pending, but Catherine tells me a plea bargain is likely. Victor declared bankruptcy. His marriage to Danielle is over. The family, as I knew it, doesn't exist anymore. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about revenge. It doesn't fill the hole. It doesn't undo the betrayal or erase the years of lies. What it does, if you're careful, if you're deliberate, is clear the ground. It burns away everything rotten and leaves you standing on bare earth with the chance to build something honest. Lily and I live in a smaller place now, a 2-bedroom apartment near her school. I painted her room lavender because she asked for the color of the sky just before the stars come out. She has art classes on Tuesdays and soccer on Saturdays. She asks about her mother sometimes, and I tell her that Mommy made some mistakes and is working on fixing them because Lily is 6 and she doesn't need to carry the weight of what the adults in her life did. She'll understand someday, but not today. Last week, Lily brought home another drawing from school. This one showed just 2 figures standing in front of a small purple house. One tall, one tiny, both smiling. At the bottom, in her careful kindergarten handwriting, she'd written, "Me and Daddy." I put it on the refrigerator where I can see it every morning. Some nights, after she's asleep, I sit in the quiet of our small living room and think about everything that happened. I think about the man I was before, trusting and naive and so desperate to be loved that I let people hollow me out from the inside. I think about the man I became, cold and calculating, capable of violence I never imagined. And I think about the man I'm trying to be now, somewhere in between, someone who knows that trust should be earned, that kindness isn't weakness but blindness is, and that the most important thing in the world is a little girl with lavender walls and a smile that makes all of it worth surviving. They thought I'd never fight back. They thought the quiet, dependable Marcus would just take it and keep going, head down, heart open, wallet available. They were wrong. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that the most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest one. It's the quiet one who's finally had enough.